The planet was cold and gray, a world where the wind carried dust instead of warmth. On this world lived a small alien girl, her skin pale and her eyes wide like two burning moons. She was different from the others of her kind, and because of that, she was unwanted. Every day she walked alone through the narrow stone streets of her village. Children hissed at her, calling her names, throwing pebbles toward her fragile frame. Adults turned away as if she carried a sickness. Even the elders, who were supposed to guide and protect, whispered that she was a mistake. Her name was whispered. In scorn, never in kindness. They said she was too weak to work, too soft to fight, and too strange to belong. She learned to lower her eyes, to make herself small, to disappear into shadows whenever she could. But no matter how silent she tried to be, the pain of being unwanted followed her like a shadow. At night she returned to a broken hut at the far edge of the village. No fire burned in her home, no voice called her name. The air inside was cold and the roof leaked when it rained. Sometimes she sat in the corner, wrapping her thin arms around herself. She told herself stories of warmth she had never known, stories of someone who would protect her, someone who would hold her close and say she was enough. But the truth was cruel. No one came for her, no one wanted her. She was the lonely alien, forgotten by her own people. When the stars rose above her world, she often lay on the ground and stared at them. The sky was wide, endless, filled with lights that did not belong to her planet. She wondered if somewhere out there, in the endless dark, there was a place where she would not be hated. She wondered if love was real, or only a story told to children who deserved it. The others in her village mocked her for dreaming. Stop looking at the stars, they told her. They will not feed you, they will not save you. But she could not stop. The stars were the only friends who did not turn away, the only ones who listened to her when she whispered her secret wishes. One night, as the wind howled across the barren land, she climbed a small hill behind the village. She sat alone, her small body shivering against the cold. Her eyes looked upward, searching the heavens as if the stars might answer her. And in a voice almost too soft to hear, she whispered, "Please, I don't need riches. I don't need power. I just want a father's love." The words hung in the air like fragile glass. They were words she had never spoken aloud before. She had never dared to admit what she longed for most. Not just food, not just warmth, but the gentle, steady love of someone who would not abandon her. She dreamed of what it might feel like to be held, to hear a voice that said, "You are not alone," to feel strong arms lift her when she fell, to have someone who would guide her, protect her, and tell her she was worth something. The girl's chest ached with the wish. She knew it was foolish. She knew it was impossible. Her people had no word for father, filled with kindness. Among them, fathers were distant, harsh and quick to cast away the weak. But still she begged the stars for it, because no one else would listen. The stars blinked above her, silent and ancient. She waited for an answer, but none came. Only the endless night stretched over her, and the bitter wind pulled at her skin. Her eyes filled with tears, though she tried to stop them. She pressed her hands against her face, her small body trembling with quiet sobs. She thought of tomorrow, another day of cold stares, cruel words, and empty silence. She thought of the years ahead, long and gray, with no hand to hold and no heart to love. The weight of loneliness pressed down on her, heavy as the dark sky above. And yet, even in her sorrow, her eyes returned to the stars, for though they were far, though they were silent, they never turned away. They burned bright against the darkness, as if to say, somewhere there is more than this. The lonely alien girl closed her eyes, her whispered prayer still hanging in the wind, unaware that the stars she prayed to were listening, unaware that her life was about to change forever. The night was colder than before, and the stars seemed sharper. The alien girl sat on the hill, her thin arms wrapped around her knees. She had whispered her prayer for a father's love, but the sky gave her no answer, only silence, only the long cry of the wind across the barren land. Still, she did not move. She stayed there long after the village had fallen asleep, her small body trembling, her eyes fixed on the endless dark above. Some part of her refused to stop believing. Some part of her heart whispered, "If I keep asking, maybe someone will hear me." She pressed her hands together, the way she had seen elders do in old rituals. Her people no longer prayed to the stars. They said the stars did not care, but she had nothing else. No mother, no father, no family. The stars were all she had left, so she spoke to them as if they were ancient guardians watching from far away. "I am alone," she whispered, her voice breaking. "No one wants me. No one calls me their child. No one tells me I am worth anything." Her lips trembled as she forced the words out. "I don't want riches, I don't want power, I don't want glory. I just want a father, someone who will love me, someone who will stay." Her words floated into the night air, fragile and desperate. The wind carried them across the silent hills, into the dark sky. The girl's tears glimmered in the starlight, small drops sliding down her pale skin. She was not crying loudly but softly, as if she was afraid even her own people would hear her weakness. In her heart, she pictured what she longed for. She saw a figure taller than her. Strong with kind eyes, she imagined him kneeling down, lifting her when she fell. She imagined him speaking words she had never heard before. "You are my daughter. You are not alone." The picture felt so real it made her chest ache. She clung to it as if it could shield her from the cold. The night stretched on, and still she whispered to the stars, each time her voice softer, weaker, but filled with the same plea. "Please, let me find a father's love. Please." Far away, the sky stirred, though she did not yet notice it. A faint light shimmered at the edge of the heavens. It was not a star, for it grew brighter, stronger, moving slowly across the dark. But the girl's eyes were closed. Her head bowed as she whispered her prayer. She did not see the sign, not yet. The light grew larger, piercing through clouds of dust. It flickered like fire, streaking across the sky. The ground trembled faintly under her feet, though she thought it was only her shivering body. Somewhere beyond the village, a sound echoed deep and heavy like thunder breaking the earth. The girl finally opened her eyes. Her breath caught in her throat. A streak of burning light split the night sky in half. She gasped, her small hands clutching at the ground for balance. The stars had always been silent, but tonight one of them had fallen. For a moment, she thought it was a dream. Her heart pounded, her mind racing. Had the stars answered her prayer? Had someone truly heard her voice? She scrambled to her feet, her weak legs shaking as she stood, her eyes wide with fear but also with wonder. The falling light vanished beyond the hills, far from the village. Smoke and fire marked the place where it had landed. Something had come down from the heavens, something not of her world. The girl's heart burned with a mix of terror and hope. Her people would call it a curse, a danger, a thing to be avoided. But she felt something else, something she could not explain. It felt as if the stars themselves had whispered back, "Go, child. See what waits for you." She wanted to run, yet her feet carried her forward. Her small body trembled, but her steps did not stop. Through the cold night, across the hills, she moved toward the fallen light. Every step filled her with fear, but also with the thought, what if this is the answer to my prayer? Her voice returned in a soft whisper, "Please, if someone heard me, please don't let me be wrong." The smoke thickened as she drew near. The air smelled of fire and metal, unlike anything from her village. She could see strange marks burned into the ground. And then she saw it. Torn metal, sharp edges glowing faintly, a shape unlike anything she had ever seen. Her heart thudded in her chest, her breath quick and shallow. Something, or someone, had fallen from the sky, and she knew with a certainty that made her shiver that her life would never be the same again. The night no longer felt silent. The alien girl stood frozen at the edge of the smoking crater. Her eyes widened as she stared at the twisted metal glowing faintly in the dark. It was not stone. It was not wood. It was not anything her people had ever built. This was something that had come from the stars. The ground was still warm beneath her feet. Smoke curled upward, carrying the smell of fire and strange oil. The girl's heart pounded, half of her wanting to run back to her broken hut, but another part, stronger than fear, pulled her forward. Her whispered prayer echoed in her head. "Please let me find a father's love." She stepped closer, her small hands shaking. The wreckage groaned, sparks flickered, and pieces of glowing metal hissed as they cooled. Then she heard it. A sound that froze her breath. A cough, rough and painful. Not from a machine, but from a living throat. Her eyes darted to the broken shell of the fallen craft. Something moved inside, slow and heavy. The girl's body tensed. Her legs wanted to run, but she could not turn away. The stars had sent this, and she had to see what it was. The sound came again, a groan of pain. Then a shape appeared in the smoke, crawling out of the wreck. The figure was tall, taller than anyone she had ever seen. Broad shoulders, 2 arms, 2 legs. But not like her people. This being's skin was pale. Under the firelight, and its face was strange. It was a human, though she did not yet know that word. The alien girl gasped and covered her mouth. The figure stumbled, coughing, pressing a hand against his side. Blood dripped through his fingers, dark against the smoke. His eyes lifted, sharp and tired, and they landed on her. For one moment, time seemed to stop. The girl's heart raced, every warning from her people screamed in her mind. Strangers were danger, outsiders brought death. But she could not move, could not run. There was something in the human's eyes, something she had never seen before, not hate, not disgust, but pain and exhaustion. And beneath it something that felt almost familiar. The man reached for a weapon lying near the wreck. The girl flinched, expecting him to attack, but then he stopped, his grip loosening. He looked at her small frame, her trembling arms, her wide eyes filled with fear, and he lowered the weapon, letting it fall to the ground. The alien girl blinked in shock. No one in her world had ever spared her. No one had ever chosen not to hurt her when they had the chance. Yet this stranger, bleeding and broken, had looked at her and seen something else. She stepped closer, her feet crunching on the ash. The man's lips moved, words spilling out in a language she did not understand. The sounds were deep and strange, but his tone was not cruel. It was soft, tired, almost gentle. Her small hand shook, but she did not turn away. She bent down, pulling from her ragged clothes a piece of bread she had saved from earlier. It was old and dry, barely enough to feed herself. But she held it out, her eyes locked on his. The man looked at the bread, then at her slowly, carefully. He reached out and took it. His hand was rough, heavy, but he did not snatch. He held it as though it was a treasure. The girl's chest tightened, her breath unsteady. For the first time in her life, she felt she had something to give, something that mattered. The man ate slowly, every movement showing his weakness. Yet when he finished, his gaze returned to her, and this time he did something she had never seen before. He smiled, faint and broken, but real. The girl's throat ached, her heart confused. Why would a stranger smile at her? Why would someone not push her away? Her people had called her worthless, yet this being from the stars looked at her as if she was more than nothing. She whispered in her own tongue, though she knew he could not understand. "Are you the answer to my prayer?" The man tilted his head, not understanding the words, but he heard the tone, the soft trembling in her voice, and he reached out, his large hand resting lightly on her shoulder. The touch was gentle, steady, unlike the harsh hands of her people. It was the touch of someone who did not see her as weak, but as a child. Her eyes filled with tears she could not stop. For the first time, she was not invisible. For the first time, she was not unwanted. The stars had given her something she could not yet name. But deep inside, she felt it was the beginning of everything she had longed for. And behind them, the wreck of the ship smoked quietly, the proof that this strange meeting was no accident. Something greater had listened and answered her silent prayer. The smoke from the wreck still drifted into the night sky. The alien girl and the human soldier sat in silence, both staring at each other. Neither spoke the same language, yet something deeper had already been said. Her eyes carried fear, but also hope. His eyes carried pain, but also a strange softness. The girl's heart pounded as the man tried to stand. He groaned. His hand pressed tightly against his side. Blood stained his clothes, but he did not cry out in anger. He only staggered forward, his body heavy, his steps slow. The girl gasped and rushed closer, her small hands trying to hold him. She was too weak to lift him, yet she pushed with all her strength. The man looked down at her, and for a brief moment he let her carry his weight. They reached the edge of the crater where the ground was cooler. The man sank to his knees, breathing hard. The girl knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she searched her pouch. She pulled out a strip of cloth torn from her own clothes. With nervous hands, she pressed it against his wound. The man flinched, but he did not push her away. Instead, he closed his eyes as if trusting her. She whispered softly in her own tongue, "You are hurt, but I will help. Please stay. Don't leave me too." Of course, he could not understand her words, but he understood the sound of her voice. It was not the voice of an enemy, it was the voice of a child. The soldier reached out, his rough hand resting on hers. His touch stopped her shaking. For the first time, she felt as if her small hands had meaning. Together they pressed the cloth against his wound, two strangers from different worlds bound by a moment of trust. As the night stretched on, the girl stayed by his side. She gathered twigs and started a small fire, her eyes always watching him. He leaned against a rock, his breathing uneven but steady. Every now and then his gaze would fall on her, puzzled but gentle. He tried to speak, his voice deep and strange. Words she could not understand spilled from his lips. She tilted her head, listening as if she could learn the meaning just from the sound. When he saw her confusion, he stopped. Instead, he drew shapes in the dirt with a stick. A circle, then a line, then something that looked like a star. The girl blinked, and then slowly, she copied him. Her fingers traced shaky shapes in the dirt. A triangle, then a rough figure of a small body with wide eyes. She pointed at it, then at herself. The man gave a faint smile, then pointed at his chest. He spoke a word. One word. Perhaps his name. The girl whispered it back, though the sound was strange on her tongue. She did not know if she had said it right, but the man's eyes softened, as if hearing his name spoken gave him strength. Then he pointed at her, drawing again. His lips moved, giving her a word of her own, a name not spoken in hatred, not twisted in scorn, but given in kindness. Her heart trembled at the sound. She repeated it again and again, holding it close like a treasure. It was the first time someone had given her a name with warmth. The firelight danced between them, and for a brief moment, the world outside the crater felt far away, but the girl knew danger would come. Her people feared outsiders they called falling lights curses. If they discovered this man, they would destroy him and punish her too. Her hands tightened into fists as the thought struck her. For once she did not want to hide. For once she wanted to protect something, someone who mattered. The soldier seemed to sense her fear. Though he could not know her thoughts, his eyes followed hers as they drifted toward the village. He shook, his head weakly, as if warning her not to bring danger closer. She swallowed hard, nodding slowly. She understood. This bond had to remain hidden, at least for now. The night grew colder, the stars watching silently overhead. The man finally lay back against the rock, exhaustion pulling him into restless sleep. The girl sat close, feeding the fire with small sticks. Her eyes never left him, her heart still racing. She whispered softly, though he could not hear, "I don't know who you are, but you are the answer the stars gave me." Her small body leaned forward, her arms wrapping around her knees. She stayed awake, guarding him through the night. For the first time, she was not just the lonely alien. She was someone with a purpose, someone who had found a reason to stay alive. And in the quiet, broken crater, two lost souls from different worlds had met, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as something far more rare, the beginning of family. Morning light crept over the hills, touching the smoke and metal of the broken ship. The human soldier woke slowly, his body stiff, his wound aching. Beside him, the alien girl sat curled up, her eyes heavy with sleep, but still awake. She had kept the fire alive through the long night, refusing to let it die. When his eyes opened, she gasped softly. He was alive. He had not left her. Relief spread across her small face, something she had never felt before. The soldier gave a faint nod, as if to say he was still here, still fighting. The days that followed became something new, something the girl had never known. She brought him water from a stream, hidden in the rocks. She searched for food, roots and dry bread stolen from her own meals. Each time she returned, his eyes followed her with a quiet weight. Not the sharp, cold stares of her people, but the steady gaze of someone who saw her. The man began to move again, slowly, with effort. He tore pieces of metal from his wrecked ship, his hands rough but skilled. The girl watched wide-eyed as he shaped broken tools into things she did not understand. He worked with fire and sparks, fixing, building, surviving. To her it looked like magic. And yet he always paused when he saw her watching. Sometimes he would smile faintly, sometimes he would hand her a small piece of metal, as if to say, "You are part of this too." At night, they sat near the fire. The man drew more shapes in the dirt, stars, paths, lines that marked the sky. The girl copied him, her small fingers tracing each mark. She learned his sounds slowly, awkwardly. Simple words first: water, food, fire, name. He struggled with her words too, repeating them with his strange voice. And each time he spoke them, her chest warmed. For the first time, her language did not feel like chains. It felt like something shared. The bond between them grew like the fire they fed each night. She began to laugh, a sound she had almost forgotten she could make. The soldier's lips curled in return, a faint smile, tired but true. It was strange, unreal, like living inside a story whispered by the stars, but shadows still followed her. Each time she left the crater to fetch water or food, she felt eyes on her, villagers whispered, their voices sharp as knives. "She wanders at night," they said. "She is cursed. She hides something." The girl kept her head low, but inside she shook with fear. If they discovered the man, if they found the wreck, they would destroy everything. Yet she could not stay away. Each day she returned to him. Each night she stayed by his side. For the first time she felt needed, not as a burden, but as someone who mattered. The soldier's wound healed slowly, his strength returning bit by bit. Sometimes he stumbled, but she caught him. Sometimes she fell, but his large hand lifted her back up, steady and firm. It was a rhythm, a bond built in silence, in trust, in small moments that carried more weight than words. One evening, as the stars rose high, she sat close to the fire. The soldier reached into his torn jacket and pulled out something small. It was a locket, scratched and bent from the crash. Inside was the image of a human child, smiling, eyes bright. The girl stared, her breath caught. She pointed at the picture, then at him. His face grew soft, his eyes heavy with memory. He whispered a word. "Daughter." The girl's chest tightened, tears filling her eyes. Daughter, a word she had never been given, a word she had begged the stars for. He touched the locket, then touched her shoulder. His lips moved again, repeating the word, this time pointing at her. Daughter. Her tears fell freely now, her small body trembling. For the first time, someone had claimed her, not as a curse, not as a mistake, but as something worth holding. She pressed her face against his arm, clinging to him as if she would never let go. The soldier's rough hand rested on her head, steady and strong. No words were needed. The bond had already been sealed, but the world outside their small fire was not silent. In the distance, voices carried through the night, harsh and cruel. Villagers with torches moved across the hills. Searching, the girl's heart leapt with fear. Her people had come, and if they found him, they would end everything. The soldier noticed her fear, his hand tightening on her shoulder. He looked at her, his eyes steady, ready to protect. The girl swallowed hard, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Please, don't leave me, not now." The soldier reached for his weapon, his wounded body still weak but his will unshaken. He stood tall, placing himself between her and the sound of approaching danger. The bond had grown, strong as fire, unbreakable as steel, and together they would face what was coming. The night burned with torchlight. Voices carried across the hills, sharp and angry. The alien girl's people had come, their steps heavy, their words full of hate. They had seen the smoke from the crash. They had followed her secret trails. Now they marched closer, ready to destroy whatever they found. The girl's heart pounded as she pressed herself against the soldier's side. Her small hands clutched at his jacket, her eyes wide with fear. The man looked down at her, his face hard but calm. He knew danger when he saw it. He had faced enemies before, but this time, he was not only fighting for himself, he was fighting for her. The torches appeared first, glowing in the darkness like angry stars. Figures followed, tall and harsh, carrying spears and blades. The voices grew louder. "The cursed child is here," they shouted. "She hides with the fallen star. Bring them out, burn them both." The girl trembled, tears filling her eyes. She wanted to run, she wanted to hide. But the soldier's hand rested on her shoulder, steady and strong. He shook his head, telling her without words, "Do not fear." The villagers stopped at the edge of the crater, their eyes narrowed at the wreck, the fire, and the strange figure standing tall. The soldier raised his weapon, his body weak, but his spirit unbroken. He stood in front of the girl, shielding her with his frame. The villagers hissed, pointing their spears toward him. "Kill the outsider," they cried, "and punish the cursed one who protects him." The girl felt her knees weaken, her body shaking. She looked at the soldier, his back straight, his weapon ready. She knew he would fight even if he could not win. But deep inside, she also knew this was not his battle alone. This was her test, her final chance to choose who she was. Her people demanded obedience, demanded silence. All her life she had obeyed. She had stayed quiet. But now, standing behind the soldier who had called her daughter, she felt something rise inside her, something stronger than fear. She stepped forward, her small body shaking but her voice sharp. "No!" she shouted, her words echoing across the crater. The villagers froze, surprised to hear her speak. The cursed child, the unwanted one, had never raised her voice before. "I will not leave him," she cried, her voice trembling but fierce. "He is not a curse, he is not an enemy." Her people shouted back, their voices filled with rage. "You shame us? You betray your own kind?" But the girl stood tall, her chest heaving. "For the first time I am not alone," she shouted. "For the first time I have someone who cares." The villagers moved forward, their spears raised. The soldier stepped in front of her again, ready to fight. But the girl grabbed his arm, her voice breaking. "No, this is my fight too." She spread her arms wide, standing between the soldier and her people. Her small body looked fragile, but her voice cut through the night. "You called me weak. You called me worthless," she cried, "but I have found something stronger than all of you." Her eyes burned with tears, her voice shaking but unbroken. "I have found love, and I will not give it up." The villagers hesitated, their torches flickering. Some sneered, others frowned, unsure. They had never seen the cursed child stand against them. They had never seen her eyes filled with fire. Instead of fear, the soldier lowered his weapon slightly. He looked at her, his face softening. He understood what she was doing. This was not only about survival, it was about her becoming something new. The leader of the villagers stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "You choose the outsider over your own people?" he demanded. The girl lifted her chin, her voice steady. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I choose him." Silence spread through the crowd, heavy as stone. The leader raised his hand, ready to give the order. The soldier tensed, ready to fight to his last breath. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the villagers lowered his spear, his eyes soft. Another followed, their torch dipping toward the ground. They had seen her courage, her defiance. They had seen a child who had been cast aside all her life stand and claim her place, and for a moment their anger faltered. The leader growled, but the voices of doubt spread. "She is only a child," one murmured, "a child who asks for love." The crowd shifted, unease growing in their ranks. The girl's chest heaved, her heart racing. She had spoken. She had stood. For the first time, she was not the cursed one, not the silent one. She was someone who had chosen. And beside her, the soldier's hand touched her shoulder, firm and proud, no matter what came. Next, she knew one truth. She was no longer alone. She was no longer unwanted. The final test had been given, and she had passed. The crater burned with silence after the shouting faded. The villagers stood frozen, their torches flickering in the cold night air. Some looked away, some lowered their weapons. The cursed child had spoken, and her words had struck deeper than any blade. The alien girl trembled, but she did not step back. Her small frame stood between the soldier and her people, her arms outstretched, her voice still ringing in the air. "I choose him," she repeated, her eyes shining with tears. The soldier behind her felt something stir in his heart. He had seen bravery before, but never in such a fragile form. The leader growled, anger twisting his face, but the crowd no longer burned with the same fury. Doubt spread among them, whispers breaking their unity. "She is only a child," one muttered. "Look at her. She asks for love, not war." Another lowered his spear, his eyes full of conflict. Slowly, one by one, the torches began to fall back, their flames shrinking. Into the night, the leader shouted again, but his voice was weaker. The villagers did not advance, they only stared at the girl with uneasy eyes. And then, in a wave of silence, they turned one by one. They began to leave, fading into the darkness. The leader cursed, but he too followed, until only smoke, ash, and the sound of the wind remained. The girl's knees gave way, her body collapsing to the ground. She had spoken, but now her strength was gone. The soldier knelt beside her, his large hand steadying her small frame. He pulled her close, his rough voice whispering words she could not understand. But she felt the meaning. She felt the promise. "You are safe. You are mine. You are not alone." Her tears flowed freely, soaking into his jacket. All her life, she had begged the stars for a father's love. And now, in the arms of a broken soldier from the sky, she had found it. Not in riches, not in power, but in the quiet strength of someone who refused to leave her. The days that followed were hard. The soldier's wound still ached, his strength not fully returned. The wreck of his ship was beyond repair, its pieces scattered across the land, but he did not despair. He had found something worth more than going home. He had found a child who needed him, and he needed her just the same. Together they built a shelter near the crater. The girl gathered wood and stone, her small hands working beside his larger ones. The soldier taught her new words each night. Pointing, drawing, repeating. She taught him her words too, laughing when his strange voice stumbled. The fire between them burned not just with warmth, but with belonging. Sometimes she still looked at the stars, her eyes wide and wondering. But she no longer begged them for love. Instead, she whispered her thanks, for they had answered her prayer in a way she could never have imagined. The soldier carried the locket always, the image of his lost daughter close to his heart. But now when he looked at the alien girl, he did not see only loss, he saw new hope. He saw a child who had claimed him, as much as he had claimed her. He called her daughter, again and again, until the word felt carved into the stars themselves. The girl grew stronger, her voice no longer shaking when she spoke. Her people still whispered about her, still called her cursed, but she no longer bowed her head. She no longer feared their words, for she knew she had something they could never take from her. When the wind howled across the barren hills, when the nights grew cold and long, She leaned against the soldier's side, his arm wrapped firmly around her, and she felt safe. She felt wanted. She felt loved. The lonely alien was lonely no more. She had found what her people could never give. She had found what the stars had promised, not just a protector, not just a friend, but a father, and the soldier, who had fallen, from the sky broken and bleeding, found that humanity's greatest gift was not war, not power, not victory, it was love, the simple bond between two souls who refused to let go, under the endless night sky, the firelight glowing between them. The outcast and the soldier sat together, no longer strangers, no longer alone. They were family, and nothing in the universe could take that away.